Where to go, where to go. I'm still trying to grasp the disturbance in the force that I woke up to last Saturday morning. And this morning, as I contemplated arising to the misplaced imaginal hour that daylight savings time sets in motion, I wondered. Wonder's a good term if used appropriately. But what I was wondering about was my effectiveness in the use of the astrological tool as a vehicle for awakening myself to factors well beyond the daily turmoil that modern society seems to have thrown us into. In growing up, I, as well as many, were offered visions of a rather dynamic society where our interaction with one another and with the planet was painted in visions of substantial, creative, flowing interaction between us as we shared in the bounty of what it is that being on planet Earth could be about. But as I stirred this morning, I pondered at depth. We're in Pisces. We're pondering at depth is definitely on the table. Why is it that a majority of the citizenry of this planet would appreciate tuning more effectively into that vision that we grew up with? Yeah, the majority, most of us, are being manipulated by international systems of control. That are And for some reason, most of us don't seem to be able to recognize what is going on by this small handful of what might be termed in some circles the elite. I wonder on that. There's that wonder term again. There have been times on this planet when a more receptive process to our engagement with one another has provided for some rather dynamic and beautiful versions of what our interactive capacity can birth here on planet Earth. It is likely that this seemingly elusive capacity that we all carry within us has its underpinning in the receptive, feminine quality of lunar awareness. When was it when I know enough about history to effectively be able to pinpoint the shift from the receptive aspect of being to the patriarchy, controlling, over-controlling version that has, I was going to say inspired, but that word has a much more positive potential to it than what has been foisted upon us by a strong masculine domineering archetype that always wants more and more and more beyond the carrying capacity of what it is that this planet can provide. As I considered this morning what it was that I might astrologically portray for our consideration, I wondered again. Well, I have the availability of being able to use the astrological tool to spin tales, if you will, of ways to tune into how we get along with one another, partnership, or appropriate versions of career choices that we have options to draw from. And what might be the energy in any particular location on the globe that we find ourselves that we would do best to tune into while there. But this morning, I have a willingness to push that stuff aside. Because in that version of the astrological tool, this morning what I saw was something more akin to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. There are much more significant and larger factors in play that require me to query into. This may at times seem to extend well beyond the parameters of the astrological tool. And that is appropriate. I have always made an attempt to see the positive side of potential. And even this week, you think of the positive. The two planets that come to mind are Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. Its expansive version of being able to be more inclusive of more. And Venus, the process of how we engage with one another with the potential of tuning into artistic expression. This week, Jupiter, which has been going retrograde since last fall. I think it was last fall. Yeah, I'm going to say last fall. Close enough. In a sign Cancer that can have a capacity to awaken us to what does it mean to be home? What does it mean to feel the presence of family? Not just your current local blood family, but going back into the ancestral versions of where we came from. Jupiter, retrograding back through Cancer, has been asking us, are you paying attention enough to the larger picture of what the human family could be. Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius. Pisces, we're in the Pisces season right now. From the Sagittarian perspective, which when we start the week, the moon goes into and moves out of bounds and is the ruler of Cancer, where Jupiter is, has a, what should we call it, a philosophical and functional aspect to it that would have us ask big questions. With the moon and Jupiter in each other's signs as we begin this week, and the moon being out of bounds, it might behoove us to tune into, from the lunar perspective, what options are available for us to tune into in the becoming process. One must ask, are there hard and fast rules that say the direction that seems to be manifesting as that disturbance in the force right now need to continue? Philosophical questions. If I follow along that line, what am I becoming into? Do I want to become more of the beast that has little respect for one another or for this planet that we live on? Can I feel the angst that is being perpetrated by just a few right now, that we all have to live with if we continue along this path? Jupiter asks, do you feel at home with what is transpiring now? Now, I'm emphasizing Jupiter perhaps a little more than normal, but it's for a reason. As we get to the waning quarter moon here on Tuesday, moon's still out of bounds. It's going to catch up with the sun and be this final quarter moon on Tuesday. Crisis in consciousness. This is up this week, and it should be for all of us. When Wednesday comes along, Jupiter has once again turned direct. When planets move between retrograde and direct, or direct and retrograde, they sit at a particular degree, and depending on the planet, for, a day or two, a week or two, a month or two. It depends on the planet. And Jupiter, ruler of both Sagittarius and Pisces, which is where we are right now, is sitting at that mid-degree of that cardinal Cancer sign. just out of curiosity, I glanced to see what is the Sabian symbol, according to Dane Rudger's interpretation, of that particular degree, because Jupiter has been at that degree for a while and will be for a while longer. And when I say a while, I mean weeks. The Sabian symbol reads, a man studying a mandala in front of him with the help of a very ancient book. The keynote, a deep concern with problems raised by the process of personality integration. You know, I think of that term personality integration, and another term is, it's orbiting around me as I search for it, and that term is initiation. Something is trying to put in an appearance that the study of this mandala view requires meditation upon. And that can be an initiatory step. Further reading about this particular Sabian symbol. After a person decides to follow a certain course of action, accepting a new allegiance, the results of this decision at the three basic levels of human experience: actional, emotional cultural, and individual mental, have to be stabilized and consolidated. This is what is meant by the process of personality integration. In Asia, the great symbol of this process is the mandala. In the Christian world, we find in various forms the symbol of the cross. The Christian design is often simple and bare. It is its reference to the crucifixion of a God-man that personalizes or emotionalizes it. The Oriental mandala can take an infinite variety of forms and can encompass a vast multiplicity of contents. It is psychological and cosmic. The square, the foundation of the mandala, potentially encloses diverse contents. The cross, on the other hand, represents conflict in action. It is a symbol of tragic overcoming. The mandala symbolizes integration of opposing trends and multiple bipolar energies. It goes on with more words about that particular dream, but I'm just going to leave it at that and ask us that as Jupiter turns or stations back to direct for most of the rest of this year, they're in Cancer. Is there some sense of a larger version of what home at its essential core being can represent as a more inclusive place to gather. We're still in the Mercury retrograde season, and I think part of my consternation currently is being able to use appropriate language to continue to be an invitation beyond the confusion of words to a soul level of awareness. Pisces can be seen as a spiritual container, which, at times can just sit there awaiting recognition. The sun going through Pisces essentially is the invitation to beingness. The sun's vitality, being Piscean in nature at this moment, asks us, are you aware of the vitality of your spiritual core essence? And are you stable in that? Mercury being retrograde in Pisces right now gives us opportunity to take stock of where is it that our thoughts are leading us. Not necessarily with the immediate desire to put those thoughts out there, but to reflect upon them, sit with them, meditate with them like the mandala. This is deep territory, the Pisces realm, that has the potential for awakening aspects of our soul's spiritual core that Jupiter, ruler of Pisces, going direct this week and sitting at that 15 degrees, is influencing to say, what more is there? Mars, ruler of Aries, recently entered into Pisces, stirring the pot, stirring the cauldron, if you will, to see what is it that's going to bubble up to the surface in this deep spiritual oceanic level of awareness for our contemplation. Aries, just recently had Neptune and Saturn come into conjunction at the very first degree, 0 degrees of Aries. This is a very, very long footprint that from the Neptunian side, which has Piscean influence, offers us the potential for insight into unlimited creative imagination. Saturn, not exactly the same. Saturn, having just come from the Piscean realm into Aries, says, yeah, I like those unlimited creative, potentials, but what form can we put it into that from an Aryan perspective is going to be meaningful. Remember, ruler of Aries is Mars. Mars is in Pisces, being influenced by that Jupiter. You have to ask yourself, what is the potential larger picture of a Saturn container that can creatively expand and not strictly exist within hard parameters of what is possible? Saturn wants there to be meaningful processes and experiences. But that doesn't necessarily mean containing oneself and holding oneself back from the potential for expansion. As we proceed through this week, you can see that Mars is moving forward, Mercury's still moving backwards. Friday, Saturday. On Saturday, look at this. Mars is at 9 degrees, 28 minutes. Mercury's at 10 degrees, 28 minutes. As Saturday becomes Sunday this week, these two are going to cross paths. That Martian energy, asking us about our deep and potentially penetrating Piscean thought processes, being influenced by that Jupiter. And yes, being energized, Mars, Mercury retrograde. It would likely behoove us to choose our words wisely over the weekend, because Mars sometimes can get a little ambitious, and Mercury retrograde is a process that best is utilized by patience, as we allow things to settle in our mental, verbal capacities, as we weigh things out. Yes, you can compare notes with people, but don't do it as adamantly as a Mars-driven energy might be inclined to, of course, unless you're willing to accept, cow pie as a response. Okay. That's all I got for this week, and there are not easy answers right now to what has been cage rattled by a small faction of characters who, at times I hear their, indications of Armageddon or Revelation or, end of the world kind of things, World War III. What do we want? We are the majority, after all. And this is just a very small faction of people who have economic control of things that we need to wrest back from them for the benefit of all of us. That's all I got. Good luck this week. We have things to do.